data is a gold mine. Proprietary data is the gold mine. How do you use it? How do you value it? How do you combine that in an ecosystem that creates more value for everybody?
Yeah.
A win-win-win.
Technology is transforming how we think, how we lead, and how we win. From InterVision, this is Status Go, the show helping IT leaders move beyond the status quo, master their craft, and propel their IT vision.
Innovation. This may be just one of the most misunderstood terms in business today. What is innovation? How do you spark innovation? Is it something reserved for startups, or can established enterprises develop this culture of innovation? If I told you today's guest comes from a manufacturing company that is over 100 years old, would the word innovation come to mind? Maybe not. However, after listening to this episode, it will. Today's guest is Kanul Tayal. Kanul is the Digital Strategy Director for Cummins, a global power technology leader. What? Digital technology? I thought Cummins built engines and powertrains. You may be surprised to learn that Cummins has an entire section of their website dedicated to digital products and services. We have a lot to unpack, so we're going to get right into it. Kanul, welcome to Status Go.
Thank you for having me, Jeff. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, and I know your background goes well beyond the walls, so to speak, of Cummins. So would you mind having our listeners get to know you a bit by sharing a bit about your career journey and the types of things that you've been involved in?
Sure, Jeff. So again, thanks for having me on your podcast. I'll start with coming out of grad school. I started as an entrepreneur, and I graduated as an electronics engineer, but realized that I wanted to focus my time on the business side of things. So I started an import-export company back in India, and this is early 2000s where India was opening up. I started with the import side of the business, where I would be in China all the time, importing furniture, chandeliers, electronics to India and selling them in the open market. And from there, we graduated to exporting a lot of items to the Western markets, handicraft items, jewelry. Then we graduated from wooden jewelry to a diamond jewelry, gold jewelry. Kind of did a lot of traveling and sales and being in trade shows, etc. We built a profitable business. I had a couple of partners, but realized that coming out of school, I wasn't trained on writing a good presentation. I did not learn that as an engineer. I did not learn how to do an NPV analysis in finance, right? So I came to the US to do an MBA and thought that it'll help me in my career. At that time, Cummins was recruiting interns for the corporate strategy role. And I joined Cummins for the summer, and 16 years later, I'm still with Cummins. I've had a lot of opportunities with Cummins in finance, marketing, sales, business development, product management. And the last 6 years I've been in the digital space. What is interesting is, if you think about my last 5 roles here, have been roles that I've been the first person doing that role at Cummins. So those roles did not exist. And I've always kind of moved towards a role which is undefined, where there's a lot of opportunity to innovate, to solve problems that are not being solved today. And I tend to graduate towards that. So in my current role, in the last 6 years, was a digital director for innovation for a while. And then from there, right now, I'm director of strategy here, where my focus is the transportation market. And my job is to help develop new strategies and partnerships that help provide more value to our end customers through our digital offerings. Apart from that, I'm pretty active with the local tech scene as an angel investor. I mentor and invest in our founders who have innovative ideas, who are trying to solve business issues. So passionate about innovation, passionate about entrepreneurship.
That is an amazing journey. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about your your work with Cummins, and I know we'll stay away from any intellectual property, right? We don't want to give away any of that. But I think what's interesting to me is the point that you made that your last several positions, when you moved into them, no one had those jobs before. And I think when you and I first met, you were the director of innovation. Prior to that, you've been in product management. What's going on at the time in Cummins that creates this innovation department? Where does that come from?
So I think it's interesting you pick on that, right? So innovation for Cummins, right? Again, I think let me make sure I understand your question. The question is around what is innovation and how what do we think about that? Is that
what was going? So a lot of our listeners out here will probably they'll be from all types of different companies. But when you think of manufacturing, when you think of agriculture, when you think of other industries, we don't always think in terms of digital, certainly, and we don't often think in terms of innovation. So something sparked Cummins to go down this path, and I'm just curious if you have thoughts about what our listeners could be looking for in their own organizations to help make that. Let's bring innovation in to their organization. Does that make sense?
Yep, totally makes sense. And I think that's a good point. I think in your intro, you talked about innovation is a very misunderstood term sometimes, and it's different for different people. For me, when I think about innovation, the first thing that comes to mind is the customer. So customer are what the needs are. Mm-hmm. What are the unmet needs, right? And to me, solving those unmet needs for the customer may mean developing a new product, a new service, a new business model. To me, that is innovation. Mm-hmm. As long as, and in our daily lives today, we all do certain bits of innovation. Innovation is everybody's job.
Yeah.
It's in everybody's job. And sometimes we consider innovation as a breakthrough, which is true, absolutely. But incremental change, but solving for a need that is unmet, to me, is where innovation starts. And
an incremental change. Is that the phrase? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And even the incremental change is great, right? Because if I think about there are people's job to be a research scientist, to come up with new ideas, great. They are innovating for sure. But somebody who's trying to write a code faster, who may go and solve a QA's problem, a quality and engineer's problem, is also innovation to me, as long as they know what they're trying to solve for. Yeah. And what tends to happen, the way I think about a framework is in 3 steps: desirability, feasibility, and viability. Desirability for the end customer. What do they want? Who's your customer? What do they want? What is the unmet need? Feasibility is, can it be done? Mm-hmm. And viability, is there a business case to do it? Sustainable. Yeah. So if all those 3 things together, to me, is innovation, but starts from understanding what we are trying to talk with the customer. So in any market, like you say, agriculture market or trucking, transportation market, where I focus on, or any other markets, there is always an unmet need. Understanding that is a start. And that's how Cummins thinks about that. And we think about that and make sure that we are understanding that to come up with ideas and solutions underpinned by digital that solves it, which could be through our physical products or through our kind of digital products.
Yep. So when Cummins is thinking about this, they've been innovating for many years, mm-hmm. Probably close to about the 100 years they've been around, right? They're a pretty innovative company when you look at them closely. But when they started down this path of digital innovation, they created a separate department for that. Why in your mind did they need this separation for that group rather than being a part of the existing structure?
It's a good question. Again, so in established companies like ours, right, we've got a business to run, a current business structure to run, and there are the quality of products and structure that allows us to deliver that, right? And when we started this innovation group 6 or 7 years ago, digital was new in the transportation space, right? And it wasn't clear what the impact would be in our space at the time. It seems more real now, 6, 7 years later, but at the
Yeah.
time, we do not know what the impact is going to be. So instead of constraining our current businesses to kind of focus on what they do well today and also figuring out what the future is in a space that is unclear, it was easier to kind of have a separate group focus on that
Mhm.
with the intent to bring it back to our existing organizations and make sure it can be incorporated as we learn more. So we created that group to be unconstrained to start with, to cast a wide net, and then constrain it based on, is there a viable solution there? Is there a feasible solution there? But not constrain it from the get-go, which a lot of companies get challenged with because of what their business models are. So
Yep.
keeping it this way allows us to have a little bit more freedom to think unconstrained, and then develop products which may be useful for the end, for the customer.
Do you think companies need to take that step in all cases to really generate innovation, or can innovation happen within the structure? You all just saw this as digital is so new, so different that it need that special focus, right? So can
Yes.
it stay in the existing org?
To- Totally can, absolutely can. I think it just depends on, again, I'm using the word digital innovation here, but in general about how different the market is going to be. What is the evolution of the ecosystems, right? How disruptive the technology might be, right? So I'm thinking about right now, talking about ChatGPT in that space for Google, right? They've been in
Right.
the space. ChatGPT, how does that impact the current business model? So I think it can absolutely stay within that. The question ends up becoming, how much do you want to burden your existing businesses
Mhm.
versus thinking unconstrained? And I think that's the kind of the sliding scale somewhat.
Yeah.
And I think depending on the company you're in and the technologies you work with and the disruption in the market might drive you to kind of think, should it be inside versus outside?
Yeah.
Uh, and also the aspiration of the company, how far they want to stretch from what they are today.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I suppose that having that organizational structure that way almost creates the feel of being involved in a startup. I mean, you're in this
Absolutely.
huge company that's 100 years old, but you've got that startup mentality, right? As you're with this. In your work with you mentioned that you're an angel investor as well, and you mentor and coach people that are in that startup space. How do you talk to them about innovation?
Yeah, it's a great question, Jeff. So I was talking to somebody the other day, and they word they use entrepreneur, and I never heard that word, but I thought it was a good word that
Yeah.
kind of describe what I do today. Is that because we are kind of this incubator within the corporate,
Mhm.
helping find partnerships, helping build new business models that enable Cummins to grow in spaces that it wants to grow in, right? So um, to when I think about angel investing and talking to new founders, they have great ideas, right? They have awesome ideas. They're always very, very good at finding the customer problem, what they're trying to solve for. Uh, or sometimes they're very good at, for example, coding, for example, but they haven't thought through what are they trying to solve for. They know the technology, they're great coders, right?
Right.
So what I tend to kind of talk to them about are the three kind of desirability, feasibility, and viability, where what they're good at and what they need to solve for to make sure they have a sustainable business model going forward,
Yeah.
and innovating something that actually does solve a problem, but also is a business model that they can actually sustain over time. So I tend to spend a lot of time kind of figuring out where they are in that journey and helping them also think about scale up as a company who's been kind of around for a while and being in this role. How do you go from where you are to think about what needs to happen between having one customer to 100 customers? And a lot of these these founders are very good at getting going, but struggle with kind of how do they scale up from where they are. So I think it's awesome because one is my passion, plus two, I spend a lot of time kind of being on the other side, on the scale up side, to help them present a picture that may help them going forward.
Well, and as an investor, you really want them to have that viability piece, right?
Absolutely.
you want that return. The other thing that I think sometimes startups can struggle in is they have, I'll call it, they have one customer, right? And they're building a product for that one customer, and it almost ends up being a custom software solution for them rather than a product that can go to market. How do you identify when that's going on, and how do you coach them or advise them to think about that scale up side?
Yeah, I think it's a very delicate balance. I think it's a very interesting question, Jeff, because I think it's equally important to have an anchor customer and really solve for that. At the same time, have a stack that allows you to kind of go have a scale up model. And I think it's very interesting talking to these founders on where they are in that journey. I find a lot of them are kind of solving for what you just said, kind of having a custom answer, and few are thinking about the scale up. And I think it ends up becoming a question about just being inquisitive about what they're missing. For example, one of the startups I was talking to, I've invested in, they're in the energy market space, and they're doing a lot of kind of report filing for energy companies. When we were discussing investing in them, we talked about how much data they would have and how much value there is in to use the data to do analytics to help everybody. Well, they didn't think about that. They were thinking about, my value is in reporting and I'm going to make X dollars per report and it's going to be sustainable. But the gold mine was in the data that they could use to really kind of help everybody in the industry. And 2 years later, that's where the value they're potentially selling to all their future investors. So kind of helping them understand that part is very important, because they are focused on the today and now on their idea, but the long-term kind of horizon is where the value is. So helping them kind of see that link is very useful for them, and we're able to help with that as a on the personal time.
Yeah. Well, and as you think about again, existing companies that maybe they've not been around as long as Cummins, but what are some technologies? You mentioned ChatGPT a second ago, but what are some technologies that you feel are really innovative in companies, CIOs, CTOs at various companies should be paying attention to those technologies and seeing where they might fit in their organization? Does anything jump out at you?
It's a good question. Well, things that come to mind, again, they're somewhat obviously, when I say it, it'll be obvious, but I think thinking about what your data is, what your data you own, and where the value is going to be for the future, right? How do you use the data to create useful insights, value to the end customer, is where the value is. And a lot of times we're in the space today where data is everywhere, but it's not sure who owns it, what is valuable, how do you value it, how do you share it. All those questions are being answered in different markets today. Some markets are further ahead, financial systems, advertising systems, they're further along because they were on the journey. But like industrial companies like ours, we are still early days in trying to understand that fully.
Yeah.
And that creates a lot of opportunities to figure out, because in the future, like even the example ChatGPT, I was listening to a podcast the other day. A lot of the value might be where the proprietary data, kind of training on the proprietary data, might create more value in the future. So if that's the case, knowing that what you have, how do you use it, is very important.
Yeah.
Analytics on top of that is very important. How do you show that is very important. So my mind always goes there. On data is the gold mine. Proprietary data is the gold mine. How do you use it? How do you value it? How do you combine that in an ecosystem that creates more value for everybody?
Yeah.
A win-win-win.
Because right now, those AI models have been trained on, I'll call it general data, right? Not data that's openly to the public, right? Open to the public, not specific data sets for a given industry or even a given company. And that's what you're saying is where the power is to start using some of those tools to do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, when we talked a couple of weeks ago, Kanul, we talked about the different types of innovation. And one of the things that you said that really jumped out at me was this concept of people innovation, people transformation. So my question to you is, can you teach someone to be innovative? And if so, how?
Yeah. The short answer is yes, absolutely. Yeah, I think it essentially starts with the mindset, and like I was saying earlier, we innovate so much in our daily lives, in our personal lives and our professional lives every day. What tends to happen is somehow we get constrained by the current constraints that are been defined because of the right reasons. Innovation to me is challenging some of the orthodoxies, right? Is thinking about what am I trying to solve for, and how am I, and that comes from the mindset of the leaders, the managers, the person, the culture of the organization. All of that translates to that, and having the right mindset, in my mind, allows everybody to innovate. I think innovation is everybody's job. Again, back to the starting what you said, to me, everybody can innovate. It's part of everybody's job everywhere. It's just a matter of how do you set the right stage? How do you kindle the right spirit? How do you make sure people can actually contribute in that way? So, yeah, we do that all the time at work. That's part of our culture. As we think about new products, new services, new business models. But that would be something that I would say every company should be thinking about.
Well, as a leader, and this may be a difficult question to answer, because it's innovation is so much a part of who you are. What steps are you taking to teach someone else in your organization how to have that mindset? Are there specific things that you're doing to model that? Are there specific things you have them do to kind of spark that?
We don't have a recipe today. And
that's what I was hoping for, was the recipe.
Yeah. No, I hope there was one, and unfortunately there isn't one. And I think it's so much dependent on the culture and people, and one more than a process. Even though it can be a process, in my mind, it can be a systematic process of doing it, but it requires enough of a continuous stream of effort for it to become a muscle memory. And it takes time, right? And in the tradition, kind of our core of the business, we've been doing innovation for a long time, so we know how to innovate well. But in disruptive spaces like digital, for example, we are not there yet. So, which requires you to have people with the right mindset to allow for risk taking, allow for failures, to allow for challenging the point of views that currently exist, and be comfortable with that conflict, I guess, within the workplace is one of the important steps, not the only step to get there, but that's where it starts. To allow that freedom of thought and conflict, I guess.
Do you put any guardrails around the freedom of thought? In other words, go back to brainstorming sessions, and you probably have different terminology for them, but can anybody suggest anything, or are there guardrails?
Yeah, so it the classic answer, it depends, but
Yep, I get
yeah. So it depends on what you're trying to solve for. Again, thinking about, for me, innovation starts with what is the unmet need we're trying to solve. What is the desirability aspect for the customer? Customer could be a person in your team, could be the end user of the product, could be somebody in the middle. We need to understand what are we trying to solve for, and if we understand that is what we're trying to solve for, intersect with where the company's mission, what the company's mission is, kind of puts the guardrails appropriately. Back in the day when we were doing we had a team doing that, it was a lot more unconstrained, because the end goal at that time was looking out in the future, many years out. We had a team who were focused on building digital products for the today that we need to deliver on our physical products. We also had a team who was focused on looking far out and saying, well, let's understand what new business models that may come up because of digital innovation. And if that's the case, let's incubate some ideas. One example is we were looking at how does the market for buses change in the future in the industry, knowing the fact that there are more electric cars, there are more cars. So we partnered with Purdue University and another company in Indianapolis to come up with a pilot where we put on a lot of different modes of transport at Purdue University, where we had buses today that they run the way they run today, but we introduced cars, Teslas, all the different modes, and connected them through an app for all Purdue users, for students and teachers to use that, like an Uber-like solution. But the difference was all was connected for the university. So when they press a button, the right mode arrives at the right time at the right place for them, right? To optimize for the transport. The university wanted the right mode of transport so it reduces the pollution in the lesser cars, lesser vehicle, lesser garage space. So we came up with a solution. We ran that pilot for 4 months to figure out what is valuable for Purdue as a blueprint for transportation. For us, what are different modes? Are buses going to continue, or are they going to get smaller over time? And for everybody, it was a win-win-win. So the innovation there was all of us working together to solve for the need for in this case the students and the university at the time. So that's kind of how we think about how to put guardrails or not, depending on the problem you're trying to solve for.
It sounds, I mean, the idea of starting with the problem. What are you trying to solve for that customer, whomever that customer is? It sometimes that sounds so obvious, but we a lot of times companies get lost about what problem are we trying to solve, right? And a lot of times we have these innovations or inventions, if you will, that are in search of a problem, right? They're kind of cool, but they're in search of a problem, right? I can remember back in the day when the PC first comes out, and they were saying, well, every household needs one. It's like, for what? To manage your grocery list, right? There weren't problems that people were thinking about. So having that as part of the mindset, and let's look for the problem and focus on that, seems like a great place to start, as you've been saying.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think of the ads that sometimes show up on like QVC and all that. I find those innovators awesome, because they even on Shark Tank, right? They come up with all these answers to solving a problem, even though some are good and some are not, but
Yeah.
they've empathized with their customer, whoever they're solving for, and came up with something that is at least trying to solve for that,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. And then you get into the feasibility and the viability, right?
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely,
And that's where a lot of them fall out on Shark Tank,
absolutely.
right? They're not viable. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. A lot of people start with the feasibility side of things, saying, "Can I build this? Can I do this?" But they sometimes forget who are we trying to solve for,
Yeah.
and can the solution actually work?
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of the innovations fail.
Well, Kanal, I have really enjoyed our conversation today, and I know our listeners have as well. One of the things that I love to do on Status Go is to end with a call to action. So, thinking about our audience, senior IT leaders, CIOs, CTOs, vice presidents, they're leaders in their space, right? What are one or two things that they should go do tomorrow because they listened to our conversation about innovation today?
Sure. I would say innovation is everyone's job. That to me is the core of what I believe in. And each of us do it every day. We just don't call it that. And think about the person, people, process that you're trying to focus on, who you're trying to solve it for. How can you help them? And to me, that is where the innovation starts. Remembering that every time helps direct the energy. And two, talk to your teams. There are so many great ideas everywhere. Everybody's thinking about this. That some people don't want to bring it up because of many reasons. But every time, every team I've been in, there've been tons of great ideas. It just needs to be channeled correctly to solve for something. So those are two things I would say. Innovation is everybody's job, and talk to your teams. They've got great ideas.
I love that because sometimes those ideas are there, and if you don't ask, you never hear about them. Yeah,
Absolutely.
That's fabulous. Kanal, thank you very much for carving time out. I really appreciate it. I've enjoyed the conversation, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time, and thanks for the opportunity to talk to you.
To our listeners, I have an ask for you as well. Please rate Status Go. Leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. We want to hear from you. Engage with us on LinkedIn. Now, if you have a question about today's topic or any of the other topics from prior episodes and want to learn more, you can go to intervision.com/status-go. The show notes will provide links and contact information. This is Jeff Tunn for Kanul Tayal. Thank you very much for listening.
You've been listening to the Status Go podcast. You can subscribe on iTunes or get more information at intervision.com. If you'd like to contribute to the conversation, find Intervision on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter. Thank you for listening. Until next time.